Hi, everybody. My name is Nina Boski, and I am here with Transitional Wisdom. With me is the founder, Morningstar Homes. Hi, Morningstar.
Hi, Nina. Thank you for having us.
And her daughter, Michaela, who is also a partner with her in the business. So I think that's a really interesting business to have because it's all about families. But what does Transitional Wisdom do?
We work with individuals and their families through intentional aging, serious illness, or age-related decline to help them maintain control of their choices, remain independent, and have the best quality of life possible. We, what I like to say that what we do is emotional estate planning. Everybody knows what estate planning is, where people decide where their assets are going to be distributed. But we work with the emotional aspects that come up around aging, around illness, and around family caregiving.
So one of the things that I'm hearing you say is that you are not necessarily the IQ of estate planning. You're the EQ, the emotional tendencies that happen along with all families. And when we're talking about caregiving, a lot of times you just hear about caregiving services. So what makes you different, or how do you add or complement to a caregiving service?
Yeah. Well, we support both the family caregivers, and we define that you don't have to be giving the direct care to your loved one. You could be coordinating the care or holding the burden of the worry, like, is my loved one being well cared for? Does my loved one have the support they need to live their best life? And so we support the family caregiver, and we do that in tandem with also working with the person who's aging, so the older adults. And I think that's what makes our model a little bit different, is that we're working with both parties to really bring people together in communication, and to bring clarity about how people want to be with each other, whether they have 1 week, 1 month, 20 years to live. It's like, how do you want to live with your family? How do you want to be supported as you grow older?
And you know what you're talking about is very dynamic. It's not just one dimensional, because you're talking about the caregiver, which has a very different need than the aging person. And then if the caregiver isn't a family person, right? Then it's talking about the families, and each family member has a different dynamic. So how does that break down? Do you work with them individually? Do you work with them together? How does that work?
We work with the entire family, and we break it down to doing individual coaching with different members of the family, and also bringing the whole family together. We design a unique training where we actually spend a whole day with a family and help them get very clear about the plan on how they can support one another and how they can support their aging loved one.
And I think it's going to be something that we're going to have to really pay attention to, because each and every one of us are living longer and longer. So, and the family unit is changing, and how we've cared for our caregivers, and the baby boomer generation is about ready to
Yeah.
hit old age. So this is a time where we really have to pay attention to a lot of our family dynamics. To somebody that might be going, okay, well, you know what? I have a family member and I'm not sure what to do. And so, do you partner with people that are dealing with the logistical, and then you come in as the emotional? Because you talk about, the emotional or the EQ of estate planning. How does that fit in with how you work with families? Because a lot of families need a lot of support, not just the emotional support as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one, Michaela?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways in which we do partner. So one is that, every family is different. What they're going through and what they want is different than, even their friend's family. And so we really get to know what are the needs there, what are the desires, and the quality of care, the type of care. And then we work with them in their location to find those resources that will match that need. Um,
Really important too, because I have to say, from my own experience, I've had multiple family members, including my mom. And when I first got involved, I had no idea how to approach this. And I think having somebody to help hold your hand, because for the person that has to be in charge of finding solutions, and maybe there's several family members, it's a really daunting and potentially emotionally draining experience, at least at first, until you understand the kind of the lay of the land. So having you guys around, I would just imagine, would be very beneficial for families. And how do you help the families? How do you actually take them through? You said a training. What is that about?
Well, to begin with, I don't know if you've had this experience, but many people do. When you grow up in a family unit, you have, a family of origin, and you have patterns that have been developed. You grow up, you become an adult, you go off, you have your own partner, your own spouse, your own family, and you develop different patterns. But when you go back home for a visit, it doesn't take very long before you just fall right back into those old patterns.
Oh, yeah.
And, I used to make a joke about it with my husband, and I'd say, well, let's see how long it's going to take this time when we go visit before you become that other person.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, so true.
and so when people fall into those patterns that maybe weren't quite functional, I mean, they were at the time, but they're not from the adult view, then issues come up, all that sibling rivalry, all those unresolved things that happened within the family unit, and
Wow.
those arise. So we help people to navigate those.
And I would imagine they're complex depending on how big the family is, how much of the toxicity might be coming up in a family, especially in the threat of a loved one possibly passing. How do you handle the aging person? Because that to me is also a challenge. I remember with my mom, getting her to stop driving was quite the challenge, right? There she had Alzheimer's, and so having her to stop driving and forgetting that, oh, she can't drive anymore, was a big challenge. How do you approach families that are having this, especially the elder, that are having this dynamic happen? How do you get through to them?
I think that's the beautiful part about working with both, like with the full family, is that through those we give tools to have those kind of courageous conversations, right? Because nobody wants to be like, I'm sure, like, mom, it's time, like, you're dangerous, you're scaring me. Nobody wants to tell their mother or their father that. But by kind of giving people the tools to have those difficult conversations together, where you're maximizing the older adults' agency and decision making, um, as well as holding space for them to share, like, I'm actually scared to give up the keys, and here's what I'm afraid I'm going to lose. When we create space for that, it's a much richer dialogue that doesn't feel so scary. And also it's something that, both people can agree to. My
Yeah.
friend, her grandfather, they had to take away the keys and he would not give them up. And so she just took him,
No, no.
and he called the cops on her. He was like, somebody stole my car.
Oh,
Luckily, they were small town, familiar with the local sheriff, and was like, he knew what was happening. But
oh,
I mean, they were just butting heads. And so
yeah.
being able to have that conversation and say, I know that you care about being safe on the road, and I care about your safety. Having both sides, you can come to a decision together.
You know what I'm hearing is that a lot of people, when they get stressed, they start talking about topics, and that's not the issue. What I hear you guys doing is that you come in and you have the right dialogue, not just a dialogue. Dad, I need you to give me the keys. No, I don't want to. And so you get into this power struggle, and you guys are coming in and finding out what do these keys represent, right? And it probably is freedom. And there's a lot of dialogue. And I know even from myself, it's really hard to have those conversations, especially if you're the child with your parent that you might have already looked up to. And now all of a sudden there's a little bit of this role reversal. They don't want to give up their role. And I know in my own patterning, I didn't want to have that role also. So having somebody more neutral to me would be such a beneficial opportunity for people to really get some hands-on tools, because you guys know more than even I do, although I've had the firsthand experience with my cousins as well. As you can work out the logistics, right? who gets what, when, and all
Yeah.
those elements. Those are pretty cut and dry. It's pretty, this person gets this person gets the other. But when you start talking about family dynamics and family healing, that can be really loaded. How do you break down that? I mean, it seems like it's a process. It's not obviously an event.
Well, I think one of the things that's important to understand is whenever there is an issue, and let's go back to the driving just as an example. The person who doesn't want to give up the keys is going to lose something, and usually it's independence. And so understanding what's important about that, and then finding solutions to how they can remain independent even though they're still not driving. So accommodating everybody's needs, as opposed to just agreeing that the senior is not safe behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so an example of that, when my mother-in-law ended up no longer being able to drive, I looked for resources in the community. And what I discovered was her community actually gave seniors vouchers, like 10 vouchers a month, to go in a taxi for free. And they would go to wherever they needed. And if they went to and from a senior center, that didn't count. So that was free. And so that was just one way. And there's, dial a ride. There's all kinds of different things in different communities. And so just helping families start looking at the bigger picture of how everybody's needs can still be met. And then teaching the family members how to access the resources that they need in their particular community.
Well, one of the things that I think is really important to look at is there's a lot of, magazines, AARP, and some of the other publications, caregiving services, and they're just now starting to touch this topic. It's really a lot of times what you hear is the logistics. We're going through a challenging time in our world with our seniors and stuff, and there's a lot of logistics that need to be worked out. What would you say to somebody right now that may have a loved one that is older and they are dealing with this pandemic right now? What would you say to them to help them through this experience?
Do you want to take that, Michaela?
I think this is a really important one. We could maybe tag team it. And it goes to a little bit of the past question that you asked around family healing as well. And what this pandemic is highlighting is that time is precious, and time with our family members is uncertain, but also a time for us to really sit back and say what is important and what is important about our relationship with each other. And so, this bit that we say about family healing, I think for some people sounds really scary. Like, what do you mean I'm going to have to heal? What do I need to heal? But the process that we do is that we, guide people through these kind of nuts and bolts logistics. And by building trust in every conversation that's about logistics, as you point out, you're talking about logistics, but you're really talking about more. What do I value? What matters to me? What is important to my family? And so you're building this shared understanding together, which is incrementally bringing you closer and closer. And in a time of pandemic, I think having a guide to take you through those steps quicker just means more quality time with your family, more quality time together in the way that you want to be.
And that's been the upside to this
yes.
pandemic. That's the upside of it, that we're all having to spend more time. Now, when you spend more time, more things have an opportunity to come up. So what do you say to that one, Morningstar, too? Because that's, to me, that's like, hello, let's call transitional wisdom, right?
Well, yes and no, because there are family caregivers that live with the individual, and then there are the family caregivers who do not. And it may be that the aging person lives with one of the adult children, or it may be that they're in assisted living. But regardless, everybody does not get together. Yeah. And the hardest part, this is what I'm hearing a lot in the last couple of weeks. My loved one is in assisted living, and I cannot go and see him or her. They are lonely, they are scared, and it doesn't matter if it's, assisted living where they're needing 24-hour care, or if they're in, a community that's over 55 and they still can't go out. But people cannot go spend time with their loved ones. So one of the things, I just wrote an article recently about this. I'm recommending that people get on some kind of a, Zoom or some other platform, conversation platform that can be filmed and recorded, and have all the family members and friends come together for this aging loved one and do a living eulogy. And
Mm,
that doesn't mean that they're dying. That means that this person can get the recording and hear how special they are to all these other people, and
oh,
that their life matters.
yes.
So, and if they are in a situation where they are ill and they're in the hospital by themselves, they may or may not survive,
Mm.
but their last words that they hear may be this living eulogy where
That's
they,
a great idea.
so
Really wonderful idea.
I think it's important, and it at least gives families a feeling that they were able to do something. They were able to be present with their energy and with their voices. And if the person is able to look, they can see them too. But right now, without people doing something like this, they feel so guilty. I wasn't there when my mom died. I wasn't able to say goodbye, and they can't take it back. It's not like, they can do
Mhm.
something about it. So it's a wound that may never heal.
Well, I think that in this time of families coming together where there's much more connection, sometimes being forced on people, it's a wonderful opportunity to start to heal. And I would imagine for some of the assisted living places, for you maybe even to partner with them on Zoom right now and being able
Yeah.
to be with the elderly too, to maybe even having conversations with them, just them themselves, about what are some of the things that are coming up for them. Because sometimes talking about that emotional stuff just gives that comfort that I'm not the only one. And I know with my mom, when she was in assisted living, they go to their rooms, they eat together, but they come back to their rooms and they have games and they have a lot of things. But I'm wondering if the emotional side is not quite being addressed. And that's where I think you guys could come in so beautifully. I love what you're doing. I think it's so needed in the world. And one of the things I also hear you saying, you haven't really said it a lot, but it's the word that comes up is legacy. You're creating a healing legacy for families. And I think it is so important because once somebody's gone, they're gone. You can't go back. So is there anything else you guys would like, uh, in this interview for the people that are going to see it to know about transitional wisdom, where they can find you? Why don't we start there?
Um, our website, absolutely, www.transitionalwisdom.com. And you can chat with us directly on the website, or you can send us an email.
Great. And
And
what would
that
you like
talks,
them to know?
oh,
I,
what is that?
I, I believe that the most important thing is that we're here to serve, to help them be able to have a better quality of life individually and together as a family unit. And because we've been there and done that, I've taken care of 3 different family members. I know what it feels like. And we were flying by the seat of our pants in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. And we learned a lot. And fortunately, I have an educational background that lended itself to this. And Michaela does as well. But having boots on the ground and experiencing it firsthand is invaluable. So we want to serve to help other people so that it can be a little smoother transition for them.
I think it's so important in the fact that your mother-daughter, you've gone through it personally. And Michaela, she's not in our group chat right now, our group interview, but you have a little one, Stella, who is is she, what is she, 8 months?
Almost
Nine?
9 months now. Yeah.
Almost 9 months. So I want everybody that is listening or watching this is to really think about your own family and think about the legacy that you want to provide, not only for yourself, but for your loved ones, especially if you have
Mm.
children that are going to be raised in this family. You only get one life, at least in this life. So I want to thank you, ladies, for joining us. And please go to transitionalwisdom.com. That's transitionalwisdom.com. And let these ladies help you. This company is a beautiful gift to your family.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.